Number 18, w squared plus 12w minus 40 equals 0. Which of the following is a solution to the given equation? I do not recommend doing this one by graphing, because if you look at the answers here, you can see there's a square root in every single one of them. So when you go to graph it to get your solution, and you're going to be looking for a parabola and it's going to cross somewhere, and you're going to be looking at those points of intersection of the x-axis, and that's going to be your answer, you're going to get this irrational non-repeating number, decimal, because it's a square root of 19. Now, if you really want to, could you graph this and then zoom in and write that down and then convert, all 4 of these into decimals and then see which one matches? You could. I don't know that that's a more time effective, I'll say cost effective, a more effective use of your time. That's going to be for you to judge. The 2 ways that you solve this on paper, which anytime you see square roots in there, these are the 2 ways you're going to be thinking about, are completing the square and quadratic formula. Now, if you look at the answer key for this, they recommend completing the square. Me, I used quadratic formula when I took this, but I always take the tests before I explain them to everyone. That's only fair, right? If I shouldn't be telling you how to do it if I can't do it myself in a timed scenario. So I'm going to show you both ways. I don't think most students are that familiar with completing the square. I think a lot of students, in my experience, they learn it for the test and then they forget it. Which, side note, don't do that. Completing the square comes back all the time in various math levels. It just does. Yeah, if you're planning on taking any math after the SAT, don't forget how to do completing the square. All right, so my method that I used first, I used the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Is it unwieldy? Yes. Is it important to memorize it? Also yes. The b's, a's, and c's here are referring to when I have a quadratic in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That is important that it equals 0. The a is the coefficient in front of the x squared. If you don't see one, like in this case, it is an invisible 1. The b is the coefficient of the x, and the c is the constant that's by itself. And the negative, if there is, like the positive and negative, that does go with them. Like up here, this negative goes with the 40. An important thing to note in this equation up here, when it says negative b, it means the opposite of whatever sign b currently is. So if you looked up here and it had been a negative 12, then it would be the opposite of that, or a positive 12 there. It doesn't just mean, oh, it's already negative, so I don't have to change it. Nope. You have to make it the opposite. Okay, so for this one, our a is that invisible 1, our b is a positive 12, and our c is a negative 40. So we start plugging things in. The opposite of positive 12 is negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 40. That's why those positive negatives so important. And on the bottom, 2 times 1, or just 2. And at this point, it is just being careful with your math. I think, honestly, the hardest part of this is memorizing this equation and getting it down solid to the point where you know you have written it down correctly. And then it's just being careful in your math. So negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared is 144 minus 4 times 1 times negative 40. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 40 is negative 160. So minus a negative 160 is plus 160 all over 2. 144 plus 160 is 304. So I'm going to, there we go. The square root of 304. Now, if you're going to be simplifying this square root of 304, normally I'd be telling you things like do a factor tree or divide by 2 and see what you get, divide by 4, see if you can keep doing that. We have a huge clue over here in our answers. Every single one of them has square root of 19 in it. So I'm going to divide 304 by 19 and see what I get, because something's going to factor out of this. And sure enough, When I do that, I find out that 304 is equal to 16 times 19. So when I have a square root, I can simplify it. Since this is square root of 304 is the square root of 16 times 19, I can split that up into the square root of 16 times the square root of 19. Square root of 16 is 4, so it is 4 square root of 19. Okay, so now I can put that in there, 4 square root of 19. And now I'm going to look for any factor that goes into these three constants. It has to go into all three of them for me to be able to take it out. If it just goes into two of them, no dice. It has to go into all three. 2 goes into negative 12, it goes into 4, and it goes into 2. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it out. If I take 2 out, I divide negative 12 by 2, I get negative 6. If I divide 4 by 2, I get 2. Divide 2 by 2, I get 1. So that is going to be negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 19. And that is D. Because it said, which of the following is a solution? And that plus or minus means it could be negative 6 plus 2 square root of 19 or negative 6 minus 2 square root of 19. And that's D. None of the others apply. The way that they wanted you to do it was completing the square, which is just as valid. But again, I just don't think most students remember it. I've just come across so many times where it pops up again later and the students are like, what are you talking about? Completing the square? I've never seen that before in my life. I guarantee you they have, but everyone forgets it. Don't feel bad about it. It just happens. Okay, so the idea behind completing the square is the perfect square trinomial, which says that a plus b squared is equal to a squared plus 2 times a times b plus b squared. So the idea is if you have these first two terms, you come up with a third term that would turn this into a perfect square. And you go like, wait a minute, what do you mean just if I have first two terms? I've got 3 terms up there. No, that's the fun part. Right, so when you are completing the square, and I'm just going to rewrite this up here in a little, be a little reference for you. A squared plus 2 times a times b plus b squared. Okay, when you are completing the square, you have to separate those first two terms because you're trying to create this perfect little happy square. And then the other term that's there on the end, you have to move it over here to kind of get rid of it, to put it out of the way. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm starting out with it, that it's over here. I want to get rid of it. I want the w squared plus 12w to be by itself. So I'm going to add 40 to both sides. I get w squared plus 12w. I'm going to leave a gap equals, on the other side, 40. All right, w squared plus 12w. I am trying to convert this into a perfect square by following this pattern. So this central term, 12w, is going to be equal to 2 times whatever my a term is times whatever my b term is. What is my a? Well, this first one right here is a squared. W squared is a squared, so my a is just w. A side note, which doesn't apply in this case, but if they're asking you to complete the square, you need to know this if you're going to use it in the future. If you ever have a coefficient in front of this first square, it's going to be an x squared, a w squared, it's going to be a variable squared. If there is ever any number in front of this, I don't care what the number is, you have to divide everything by that number to get rid of it before you can do this step that I'm doing. Will it create unwieldy fractions that make your life miserable? Oh yes, it will. Absolutely. It's another reason why people don't like completing the square, because you get crazy fractions. But just, yeah. You have to, it has to be just a plain x squared, w squared, what have you, so that your a term is just x or w, like that. All right, so my a is w. So this right here, 12w, is equal to 2 times a times b, and my a is w. So that is equal to 12w. So I'm going to get rid of this 2 by dividing both sides by 2. And I get that W times B is equal to 6W. And then to find out what, B is, I'm going to divide both sides by W. I'm just left with B on the left and 6 on the right. So my B is 6. So again, my A is W and my B is 6. So my perfect square would be W plus 6 squared. So what would that third term be? It's going to be B squared. 6 squared is 36. So I'm going to add 36. But I have to do it to both sides. I can't just do it on the left. I have to do it on the right also to keep it nice and pretty. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to get W plus 6 squared because I've converted it into that. And on the right, I have 40 plus 36, which is 76. So now I need to solve. So I need to undo what's been done to W. So I need to take the square root of both sides to undo this square. Take the square root of that side. And on the left, I'm going to get W plus 6 is equal to the square root of, why did I write 2? 76. And then going to subtract 6 from both sides to get rid of that. And I get W is equal to negative 6. And because it's a square root, we have to say plus or minus square root of 76. But I have to make sure, I have to simplify it. And again, because all my answers have square root of 19 in it, I divide 76 by 19 to see what I get. And sure enough, I get 4. So I know that square root of 76 is equal to the square root of 4 times 19, or square root of 4 times square root of 19. Square root of 4 is 2. So 76 square root of 76 is the same as 2 square root of 19. Again, same thing. Negative 6 plus or minus, and the plus 1, there is D. I know so many students just don't know completing the square. They just don't. If you want to use it, again, it's really good to know how to do it. I know it's not fun. I know it's not fun. Believe me, I know. And I know nobody likes completing the square. But it's a good thing to have in your arsenal, your toolkit. The only real time I see completing the square on the SAT outside of this one where they're suggesting you use it, but you don't have to, is when you're dealing with formulas of circles. That comes up infrequently, but it's usually more like in your number 25 to number 27, those more, high end, end of the line, really challenging sort of puzzle problems that come at the end. They'll sometimes throw in things about equation of a circle, and you do often need to know completing the square to solve those. It's a little shortcut for you right here. I was showing you why it all works, but the little shortcut method, when you get to this point, when you've moved this to the other side and you just have this, the shortcut method to figure out what this is, you take this number, you divide by 2, and then your answer, you square it. It's always going to be dividing by 2. Because of what I was showing you before, where it's 2 times A times B, and your A is always just like that plain X or W. So you're dividing by that 2 every single time to get your B. So in this case, 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared, positive 36. Add it to both sides. Go from there. So this is really a case of pick which method you like, for this kind of problem. But because they showed you that in the answer key of completing the square, I wanted to show you what exactly they were meaning by that. But for me, I just do quadratic formula. Hey guys, head over to my new site, mathwithalyssa.com, to get your free 10 video course of SAT tips and tricks. It covers things like how to make a study plan that's perfect for you, how to pace yourself during the test to get maximum points, and so much more. I'm super excited to get this out to you guys, and a lot more SAT prep help is coming for you in the weeks ahead. Again, that is mathwithalyssa.com. And if you liked the video you just watched, please let YouTube know. Comment, like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later. Bye.